Hey everybody, Steve here, and today, welcome to The Varied Life. This is a live stream, so we're coming at you live if you're signed on. Of course, nobody is right now, so you'll probably be watching this, the handful of people, after this has been posted. But if you show up during the stream, you're more than welcome to ask questions and comment. There's going to be some information that we're going to put out as to why a Second Amendment gun guy like myself left the United States and retired overseas. For a lot of people that knew me way back in the day, I had a gun channel called Safe Arms Review. I started doing gun reviews, gun training videos, gun gear stuff, shoot, move, communicate, going on the range, splitting cards, shooting and behind the back and, the Annie Oakley with the mirror thing and splitting a card. I had some fun. I really enjoyed doing that stuff. So a big part of my life was military, obviously firearms, things that go boom. And when I retired from the military at 38, because I joined when I was 17, is that I realized I don't have any toys to play with. So I started purchasing guns and was a prepper and the whole 9 yards, and that kind of morphed into doing gun and training videos and review videos. And I had at the peak about 800 plus videos. And I was even on a TV show called Armageddon Arsenals, where they contacted me and they said, hey, we want to do this TV show and we want you and your family to be involved in it. And so we did that. We got our 15 minutes of fame. And after that show, I started getting calls from other producers and things. And it's like, hey, they're really interested in me and wanting to do more gun-related TV show. And it was like, hey, this is awesome. I would love to do this stuff. And then there was a school shooting. And then all of a sudden, everybody with a gun was bad. And then, long story short, YouTube got woke and started going after smaller gun channels because I don't know why. The stuff that I was doing was the same as the big gun channels, but I guess I wasn't bringing in enough ad revenue, and there was a lot of liberals that just didn't like my content and what I said and the rights that I enjoyed, like freedom of speech, religion, guns, all of that stuff, and kind of voiced my political beliefs along there as well. So that I was kind of a target for a crowd that didn't like that, and so my videos got DMCA'd unjustly. They said, oh, this is copyright infringement. It's like, there is no copyright infringement because the entire video is me filming myself. Even had music that I had bought and got worldwide license for and so on and so forth, but I kept getting strikes, and eventually YouTube demonetized my channel. And 800 videos. I was making money, and I was like, hey, it was around at the peak was like $500 a month, which was good. That was some good money, and I was pouring it right back into the channel, and it was a hobby, and I was still working at the time, and then everything went bad, and they started taking my videos down, getting strikes, and then they threatened to they said they were going to demonetize me, and eventually they did. And then they eventually came across and said, hey, we're going to get rid of your channel and the whole 9 yards if you don't deal with this stuff. And so I was really pissed off, and so I got rid of everything because I had to, otherwise they were going to shut my channel down. So I got rid of a bunch of videos, obviously. Like I said, I had 800 plus videos dealing with firearms training, CCW law. I actually did classes where I had, would give presentations and stuff, and those got struck real hard and real fast. Yeah, they never saw the light of day. And so I got demonetized, and so I just kind of had to get rid of everything. I redid the channel during that time frame from Safe Arms Review to SAR 1076, and then eventually you look on the channel now and you got some 50,000 subscribers. The majority of those came from the gun gear days and the gun training days and the gun shooting days, and I loved it. Then, so what you see on the channel now is I started out with some drone videos because I got into that. And at the same time, I was going through a ton of stuff with my mental health, PTSD, not taking care of myself, injuries that I had gotten during the military. And so I kind of was trying to get back, and that took a little while. So then we decided to retire overseas. And this is where a number of people have asked me, and I've noticed this. Matter of fact, I noticed it today as well. Some people left comments saying, "Hey, I was a long time. I remember you like 10 years ago and all the gun videos and stuff. What happened? Why did you abandon your rights and move to another country?" And that's a really good question. It was at a point, and we're going to go over the information as for the reasons why. And probably one of the bigger reasons is expenses. So expenses in the United States is expensive compared to a lot of other countries. So with that in mind, for me to be able to retire, I would have to work till I was about 65 or 67 or 70 years old before I could retire. I was retired from the military, but I was enlisted, so that's not enough to retire on. It supplemented our income and the wife and me working, and of course our expenses were huge, so we're going to go over some of the expenses to kind of give you a comparison of what the bigger draw for me was expenses. And eventually we'll go into the retirement portion of that. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to take a look here, and bam, there we are. So there it is. This is basically what we're looking at here is Colorado. If you're looking for our rent and mortgage for our house, now our mortgage was $850. And you might say, wow, that's incredibly low. How can you get, let me preface that. We ended up buying a broken house, fixing it up 2 years later, selling it, and then taking the profits and moving it into a next worst house on the street, fixing that up, living in it at the same time, sell it, get some money, and throw that into the next house. We did that a series of times. So eventually we put a big down payment, and we were blessed with the fact that the interest rates were low. So that's how we were able to get that mortgage payment that was only $850 or $890. And we were still throwing money at the mortgage. So that was our whole idea, was to pay down the mortgage, and that's why that's so low. But if the house that we had, if you bought it, you're looking at, it would be a couple $1,000s easy, $2,000, and now it's probably even more. Electricity was about $125 a month average. The water and sewer was about $65 a month. Trash was $20 a month. Internet was $65 a month. Gas and heat was about $65 as well. That kind of averaged out. Our property tax early was about $140 a month. So in other words, you're doing, let's see, what is 140? 140 times 12. So it was about $1,680. So, and that was early on. Now, we lived in that house for many years, and every single year the property tax went up pretty much $100 and some change every single year. And, it got to the point of where it's like $2,300 or $2,200. Last time I looked, it was about $2,200 for property tax for the year. So you might be thinking, okay, well, that's $1,300 a month. That doesn't include car, gas, insurance, and all the other things, food, and so on and so forth. It doesn't include the raising of electrical rates and the raising of gas and internet. It doesn't take into account cell phone service and all of that stuff for our two cell phones. You can start throwing expenses on top of there, and then taking care of the house, and you got to have a maintenance fund, you got to buy this and that and whatever. There's all types of other expenses added on to this. And that kind of, one of the big things we saw is that the expenses in Korea, because my wife is Korean and her family's here in Korea, and my wife became a U.S. citizen, is the expenses were very different. So if we take a look at Korea, we can see that the renter mortgage was about $490. Electricity, water, sewer, trash, internet is all bundled together, and it's $130. So gas is about $24 a month average. Property tax is around $12 to $14, maybe $15 a month. Yeah, right. It's about $220 a month, depending on the exchange rate. So you can see here is that the differences between being in Colorado, and remember we had a huge down payment on our house, so our mortgage was $850, but the rent that we were paying when we were renting a place was $490. And then, you do up the totals for Korea is about $665 a month. It wasn't the apartment we're in now, but compared to if you rented a similar place in Colorado, you're still looking at $1,400, and that's a cheap place. If you go to Colorado Springs and you're looking at renting, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, good luck with that. Your rents are going to be $2,000 and more. So basically what you can end up seeing is that we basically halved our expenses by living here in Korea. So yeah, that's some very interesting things. Let's see. For our apartment, because that was the rent and expenses of a place that we were renting. Now, we purchased an apartment here in Korea, which is the apartment we're sitting in now, which is really nice. It's about 7 years old, has underground parking, which is awesome. We have a semi-private elevator, so an elevator goes from the basement and the first floor, goes up to the floor that we're on, and there's one other unit, the elevator, and then there's our unit. So it's a semi-private elevator, kind of a higher end apartment. And yeah, these are some of the costs. So the property tax here in Korea is about $20 a month. Do the math and it ends up, 20 times 12. It's morning here. It's like $240 a year compared to the 2,000 and some odd dollar a year in the United States. We have an apartment fee of $175. That covers electricity, water, and trash. All of that combined for $175. Our gas and heat here in this specific apartment averages about $64, $65 a month. Now we get internet and 250 channels of cable TV for $30 a month. How much did you get? Remember, there's no way you could touch that in the United States for $30 a month. Internet and high-speed internet and 250 channels on cable TV. Yeah, you're not going to get that. 2 cell phones here in Korea cost us $80 a month, unlimited service. And we used our cell phone and had, some roaming service when we went and vacationed in Hawaii to visit family. And even that that was less than what we paid for our regular cell phone service for 2 phones in the United States. You got a little water filter here because everybody filters their water. So you're looking at about $420 some odd dollars as a subtotal. Through on Spotify, VPN Express, Amazon Prime, we're still doing that. We're probably going to finish it this next year or this year. Apple, $10 for whatever. So we're looking at about $462 a month that we were paying to stay here. Minus a vehicle, minus food, minus medical and stuff like that. But that expenses are wildly inexpensive compared to the United States. Now, with that being said, let's get back to the big screen here. Expenses rise in the United States, but they do so at a much higher and faster rate than what they do here in Korea. So no matter where you go, you're going to have a rise in expenses every year, basically. It doesn't matter where you go, unless you're just in a real third world country and the prices just don't go up, but then you don't have the niceties and infrastructure and quality medical care. So yeah, we're not doing that. But yeah, it's expenses is huge. The difference between living in the United States, and we were frugal. We eventually paid off our house, so we knocked that down. Of course, the whole idea was to have a paid off house so we don't have to pay a rent or mortgage payment. And when we came over here to Korea, what we ended up doing is taking the proceeds of the sale of our house at near the peak of the market. We brought that here to Korea and we bought our 4-bedroom, 2-bath apartment here. All paid off. So, go back to the, what was it? the renter or the mortgage. Where is it? No, that's not it. That's not it. Yeah, I mean, we don't. That's why in housing, I only put down that we had $20 a month for property tax because there is no mortgage payment, there is no rent payment because we paid this place off. So yeah, a lot of good stuff. We're going to take another look here, and what we end up seeing is about housing or rent in Colorado is about $2,000. Korea, it's about $1,400. Property tax, you can see the difference, and I know it's like $14 and it's $16 on this one. It depends on the exchange rate. Electricity, $140 versus $40 here in Korea. Gas and heat, 90 versus 65. Water, 40 versus 10. Trash was 20, free. It's included here in our payments here at the apartment. We're paying $75 a month for high-speed internet. Here in Korea, it's basically $15 a month. For cable TV, $135 we were paying, and here in Korea it's basically another $15 because we have our cable TV and our internet rolled into a bundle. Our two cell phone services for the wife and me in the United States was about $130 a month. Here in Korea we're paying $80 for both phones. Car insurance is about a wash. Prices went up on car insurance, and it's actually the same in Korea as it is what we were paying in the United States. So yeah, there's a huge difference. I mean, look at the difference on how much you're paying is basically $1,000. So what we ended up paying in the United States was putting us further and further behind in regards to retirement. And with the expenses keep jumping up higher and higher at a much higher rate and faster rate than they do here in Korea, yeah, it's like you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And if I had to work until I'm 67 to retire, that was another 12 years away, or 15 years away. Can you imagine what your property tax is going to be then? What is your electricity? What is your gas? What is your heat? All of those things are going to continue to go up and at an accelerated rate compared to what we see here in Korea or other overseas countries like Thailand or Portugal or more expat-friendly retirement places. So that's kind of the biggest reason was expenses. Some other things that people talk about is transportation. We bought a 2018 Hyundai, $12,000. It's about it's not 110. It's about $115 a month for insurance. On gas, we pay about $35 for a tank of gas on base at the military, which is around, I think it's around $3.14, $3.20. It kind of goes up and down. Gas off post on the Korean economy, you're looking to fill up your tank and it's going to cost you about $60. So yeah, it comes out to about $145. So with the apartment, utilities, vehicle, it comes out to about $607. And that's without food, entertainment, eating out, medical, dental, things of that nature. So yeah, you can say that one of the bigger reasons for us was the minimal expenses. Now, expenses do go up here in Korea, and it's absolutely true, but not at such a fast rate like they do in the United States. So yeah, and I think I don't got anything else. Yeah. So we did all that. Okay. The other thing that we can take a look at as the biggest reason was expenses. The other one, the second biggest reason, was able to retire early. This is huge because in the United States, with the projections that I had and seeing, okay, well, with the rise in cost of living and housing and utilities and all of that stuff, I wouldn't be able to retire until I was 67 years old. So that was a ways off. That was about 15 years off. And then when we looked at like Numbrio, I think is the website. Of course, we had the wife's family here. We were able to ask a bunch of questions. How much is rent and how much is this and that and utilities and so on and so forth. That really cued us in that, hey, we might be able to retire early. And so when we did the math and we saw that we could retire early and, our house was paid off so we could buy an apartment or a house here in Korea and not have that payment, which is the largest expense that people have, generally. And then there's their car afterwards. We didn't have car payments. We paid those off, just like we did on this one. But now this allowed us to retire overseas. And it's like, wow, we can actually retire early. And so what we ended up doing, I'm 57 now. We've been here for a year, so I was 56. We spent a year in Oahu, so I was 55. And then before that, I think it was like a year or two, about a year, that I retired in the United States. But we only had enough money to, it wasn't even a year. Can't remember how long that was. But anyway, with our grand scheme and our grand plan to retire early overseas, we thought this is entirely doable. We can shave off 12 to 15 years and retire early. Yes, we were going to, lose a little bit of money on our investments and so on and so forth and take a lower income stream. But to be able to trade that and we could still live comfortably with the expenses that we just looked at, it was entirely doable and we could save money. So yeah, it was like, that was the no-brainer part. That was the part that clicked, and it's like, okay, well, what are we going to be doing here? Why am I in a state job where they micromanage? It's high stress. I was working for the state of Colorado in corrections, and I started out as a guard, and then I became a lieutenant. I was an electronics technician. I worked at Territorial Correctional Facility. That was the oldest prison in Colorado. It was a prison before Colorado became a state. And then I worked at Fremont Correctional Facility. And then when I hung it up and quit that, I did about 2 years of prison ministry. So, took time off. I got out of prison. I went right back to prison to do prison ministry. So go figure. It was a really great time. And then we went to the Hawaii and lived with our daughter for a year while she was doing residency. And she got a good thing. We did laundry. She got home cooked meals. We got to stay in Oahu for a year. We were considering retiring on Oahu, but real estate prices are so whack and out of control there that there was no way we would make it. And then on top of that, the expenses in Oahu was super, it's like, it's a nice dream, but we couldn't do it. Now, a little bit of background, being able to retire early, what would you trade for 10 or 15 extra years added on to your golden years of retirement, where you wouldn't have to answer to anybody? You didn't have to clock in. You didn't have to walk on eggshells. You didn't have to worry about your boss being a jerk and he doesn't know his ass from the hole in the ground. What would you pay or what would you trade to be able to retire and not put up with that? I don't know. It's different for everybody. So the ability to retire, 12 or 15 years early and extend our retirement time was huge. That was massive to us. And originally we thought about retiring in Thailand because we visited Thailand once. There was the Philippines. That's pretty inexpensive out there. Bali, we thought about it, but then the political and that's a whole nother video right there. But basically, we ruled out Bali. We'll go visit Bali, but we're not going to live in Bali. And there was a couple other countries that we considered that are retirement and expat friendly, that have visas that are easy to get, but nothing really clicked. We didn't pick South America because South America we just didn't. Mexico and everything down south. No offense to anybody from those places, but it just didn't give us a warm fuzzy. It didn't click with us for a variety of reasons, and a lot of that has to do with government corruption. So it's not for the people that we didn't, we're not saying those people are bad, the general population. It's the people in power that are generally corrupt and bad. So we kind of crossed that off of our list. And we ended up, it was like, okay, well, we knew we were going to retire early, and that's what we wanted to do, but we didn't know where. We knew we wanted to, but we just didn't know where at the time. And then we found out that my wife the little lady right there, because she was born and raised in Korea, and then later she became an American citizen. Because she had Korean ancestry, she could apply for a long-term visa here in Korea. And then as her spouse, I would be able to get one as well. Korea does not have like expat or retirement visas like Thailand or Philippines or Portugal or many other countries that are more retirement friendly. So it's really hard to retire overseas here in Korea. With that said, we were able to get our F1 and F4 visas because of my wife, and there are some stipulations that we cannot work for a Korean employer while we're on our visa. So for a lot of people, it's like that, you just can't do it. It's against the law. So you have to have a big enough income stream, and you have to provide tax returns, bank statements for, a year or two or whatever, like 2 or 3 years of federal tax returns and so on and so forth to prove that you're making a certain amount of money to be able to meet the requirements of here in Korea. So when we found out that we could do that, we jumped on it and we sold everything. And I mean everything. I mean the guns, the ammo, the emergency supply of food and other sundries that preppers have. I had steel targets and silhouettes and Texas Star targets. I had so much stuff, so much camping stuff, so much food. I think I had like 3 or 4 years worth of food for 3 people, for the upcoming apocalypse and end of the world. I'm not going to tell you how many rounds of ammunition I have because it was obscene. But yeah, because we decided to sell everything, and the good thing was I still believe in the Second Amendment. I still believe in the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And some people have seen me now from my old videos and see me now, and they ask this question: why did I abandon my rights? I didn't. The thing is, I'm still an American citizen. I'm just exercising my right to live overseas in another country that's afforded to me by the United States. I still heavily believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in the First, the Second, all of those amendments I believe in, and I support those things. When it comes to the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms and all that stuff, I am actively involved in government in the United States, even though I live in Korea. I'm actively involved at the state level when it comes to the Second Amendment. And so I'm writing congressmen and senators and representatives and state officials and federal officials and, nailing out messages and, hey, petitions, you need to keep the Second Amendment because that's what we have. That's our right as citizens of the United States. So I'm still very big on the Second Amendment. But an individual that had watched me and left a comment said, why did I basically abandon my rights, my Second Amendment rights? I was a big gun guy. I was huge gun guy. And it was hard to get rid of my guns and ammo and stuff and camping gear and food and preps and ammo. And there was a lot of ammo, a whole lot of ammo. It was funny because you watch TV or in the news and they say, oh, somebody was involved in an altercation, and then they search the house and it's like, oh, we found 10 guns and a few thousand rounds of ammunition. It was an arsenal, and it's like, thank goodness I never did anything wrong, because if they raided my house, good Lord, I would be on the top. I would be number 1 on the list of homegrown terrorists, because of the amount of firearms and ammunition I have. But I don't have those anymore. But yeah, that was really hard, because my life revolved, ever since I was a little kid, around firearms. My dad took me out, taught me how to shoot when I was a kid. My first stepdad, my real dad was in Vietnam, and mom got divorced or whatever, and my first stepdad took me out shooting and taught me how to shoot. And when I came into the military at the age 17, I continued on shooting. From 17 and do 20 years in the Army, you're gonna do a lot of shooting and blowing up stuff. So after that, I got involved with firearms, and I became a concealed carry firearms instructor. I was an NRA instructor for pistol and rifle And then later, I was part of a contract team of other instructors where our boss had a contract to teach firearms at Fort Carson for military police. And I think we taught at the times I was there, it was like 800 or so military police. Shoot, move, communicate, how to put your gear, how to do remedial action, how to shoot, aim, marksmanship fundamentals, how to shoot, move, and communicate, the whole 9 yards. And I love those classes. I absolutely loved them. And then I did classes on my own, aside from that company that I worked with, because then they shortchanged me a bunch of money, and then I was like, I'm not going to do that. So I taught on my own and really enjoyed that as well. So yeah, from that to going out and shooting every week, hundreds, sometimes thousands of rounds in a couple of days, to living in Korea where basically it's hard to find a gun, and average citizens, the majority of citizens in Korea don't have access to guns. How did that happen? And so this is a good question. Why did I abandon my right? It almost seems that way a little bit. But what it comes down to is that looking at the expenses we had to pay and looking at the opportunity of being able to retire earlier, like 12 or 15 years earlier, yeah, that won out. And the ability for me to end up exercising my right to be able to live in another country, because the United States has agreements with Korea and so on and so forth and other countries, and I was afforded the opportunity to retire overseas, I'm exercising that right as well. So it's not that I gave up my rights. I'm still very active in the Second Amendment. However, I just enacting the right and exercising the right to live in another country overseas and still be a U.S. citizen. So I'm still involved. I still get petitions, and I still send letters and emails and texts and stuff to the people that are in government that are trying to squash our Second Amendment rights. So, rest assured, I am still doing what a responsible citizen should do. With that being said, people have asked me, can you own a gun in Korea? And the answer to that is yes, you can own a gun here in Korea. It's just highly, highly regulated. The majority of people don't have guns. You cannot carry a gun concealed or open carry. The only time that you can have a gun and use it is when you are hunting or doing a sport. There's not a lot of competitive shooting here in Korea. In our area here, there's not a lot of hunting. And I'm not really a hunter anymore. I used to hunt when I was young, but after the military, I'm like, that's not a thing that I do. Even though I had, long-range rifles and sniping systems, rigs, all of that was just target shooting. And I really enjoyed that. But here in Korea, it's not such a huge thing as it is in the United States. Then the other hurdle that comes along with owning a firearm in Korea is that you have to get a test. There's a written test and a safety test, which obviously I would be able to pass that with my eyes closed. If you can take apart a firearm and then you can shoot, move, and communicate, and I can split a card with a mirror shooting backwards, I don't have a problem with firearms manipulation and putting rounds on target. But here in Korea, you have to get permits. Ammunition is highly regulated here in Korea. You're limited to I think it's 400 rounds a year. I would blow more than that in a day of shooting, one day on the range. I would easily do 5, 6, even 1,000 rounds of ammunition if I was shooting on my own. If I was teaching a class, I'd probably run about 400 or 500 rounds of ammunition easily. Because I'm kind of a hands-on, or I was a hands-on instructor. I guess I still am, but I just don't teach anymore. So here in Korea, the other obstacle, once I clear all those hurdles, is that once I get my firearm, it'd be like, yay! But I can't store the firearm in my house, in my residence. That's not a thing here in Korea. Remember when I said it's highly regulated? Yeah, it is highly regulated here in Korea. So you might be asking, well, where are firearms stored if you can't store them in your house? They're stored at designated police stations around Korea. And then if I want to go hunting or do sport shooting or whatever, I have to put in a request. I go to the police station, get my gun, tell them where I'm going to go. It's kind of like, how many rounds do you have? What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? How long is it going to be? It's pretty detailed and strict. So, and even then, the amount of shooting and the type of shooting I do is highly frowned upon here in Korea. Because it's more military and tactically focused. It's running and gunning, going prone, going high, shooting around vehicles, shooting out of movie vehicles, through vehicles. All of that stuff that's what I enjoyed. You don't see anybody doing that here in Korea unless it is protective services, which there's special requirements for, and obviously I wouldn't be able to get those because I'm not working in that capacity, because I can't work in Korea in that capacity or work in Korea for a Korean employer or government. So that's off the table. So yeah, it ends up there's just too many hurdles for me to bound over, and the return on the investment just wouldn't be worth it. Basically you go to a range here in Korea and you stand and you shoot and then you put it on the table. And many times there are gun ranges here in Korea that I've seen where there is a chain that goes through the gun so that you can't turn the gun around and do whatever else with it, try to shoot yourself or others. So yeah, there's no drawing and there's no shooting and no time trials, no courses of fire. I mean, they do have some shooting competitions, but where I'm at, it's just not, so it just ends up, it's too many hurdles for me to go over, and I just wouldn't enjoy it. So with that, and the other big thing in the United States is I exercised my right of the Second Amendment, and I open carried, I concealed carry. I was a concealed carry instructor, And so anytime that I wasn't working in a prison, I had a gun strapped to my hip. And that was what I did. Now, the reason for that is to exercise my rights because I was an American citizen, and I still am. But because of the rising crime, where I had been living in all the places kept getting worse and worse. And so in Colorado, it's kind of liberal. There's California's real liberal, New York, and then of course you have Colorado is real liberal as well. So, and with that comes high crime. And so there's a couple of times where I've had to draw my firearm, not fire it, but it ended up being, somebody wants to beat my ass, somebody wants to stab me. There was one time, hey, what are you looking at me for? And it's like, I'm just waiting for somebody to meet somebody at a gas station. This guy comes out, it's dark 30, we're going to actually teach a firearms class. This guy who's obviously drunk starts mouthing off at 5 o'clock in the morning, it's still dark, and he pulls a knife, and it's like, dude, you're good, I'm just waiting for a buddy of mine. And then he takes a few steps forward, and then I actually had to draw and present my firearm. I didn't point it at him, but I pointed it so that he could see it and pointed at the ground, and he changed his mind. But the crime where we were living in Pueblo, Colorado, Canyon City, Florence, Colorado, all of those, Colorado Springs, all of those places are getting higher and higher crimes. And so that was another reason why, I constantly carried a firearm. How does that gel with what's here in Korea? Korea, I have never felt safer. I have never been in a situation where I have felt unsafe for myself or my wife. And the gun crimes that happen in Korea are almost nil compared to the United States. But then again, the United States, people use firearms to level the playing field. And on average, the FBI ended up, there's a statistic that shows that about an average of 200,000 women per year, on average, protect themselves from rape, assault, torture, murder, and things like that. So yeah, I highly believe in the Second Amendment. And then you have the elderly people, the people that are infirmed and old, and I'm getting some gray, and eventually I'm going to get grayer. But, when you have somebody who's an old man or an old woman sitting in their living room watching TV, and people come in and do a home invasion, people that are in their 20s, at the peak of their physical life, and they're trying to rip you off or do harm to you or your loved ones, a firearm is the way to get them to change their mind. So I am a big proponent on the Second Amendment. So it's very different here in Korea because it's not a thing here. Crime is very low here in Korea. And, some people will say, well, the United States needs to be just like Korea. And it's like, no, that can't happen. One, our Constitution is very different than Korea. Two, the way that our country came up and the atmosphere and the behaviors and the social norms that we have, if you took the guns away now in the United States, then only the criminals would have guns. Korea, it's very different because after the Korean War, it was basically like the Wild West. And so what they found out and what they did was enact very strict firearms laws to protect the people of Korea. And so that mentality kind of went along, and there's more group societal norms than the individual norms that we have in the United States. So everybody, the majority, I won't say everybody, but the majority of people in Korea don't see the need for firearms. They don't see the need to have the right for firearms because it's not really a big thing here. Every once in a while, somebody will have a gun and do something, but it pales in comparison to what we see in the criminal activity in the United States. So enforcement has to start in the beginning. You can't just take a country like the United States and cut out the Second Amendment out from under them because it'll result in anarchy. And we see this with Australia. We see where they got rid of firearms, and all of a sudden it's like, well, if we get rid of firearms, and the UK did it as well. Well, if we get rid of firearms, then we'll get rid of all gun crimes. Well, that's generally kind of true, but then you're still going to have some gun crimes, but more overly, you're going to have an increase in knifings and stabbings and clubbings and assaults, and those things have skyrocketed in those countries. So, yeah, you didn't fix the problem by taking away the guns, and even in some places where the criminals only have guns, they use those against, if there's a way to keep guns out of the hands of criminals and leave them in the hands of, good citizens, then do that. But no liberal or Democrat has come up with a way to do that, and all they do is create more gun laws. So the gun laws that are basically don't do anything. The shooter that was in the theater, the weird dyed hair wackadoo, he was in a gun-free zone, but yet he brought guns in there. With the overwhelming number of gun laws that was against him, that did not keep him from bringing and buying a gun and getting a gun and then killing people. Of course, then there's no amount of laws that will keep people from stabbing and killing other people or raping or murdering or torturing or, capturing your kids and being a pedophile and having their way with them either. There needs to be a cause and effect, and there needs to be consequences for your actions. And for me, as an American citizen, I think it is ultimately important that people have the ability to defend themselves. So I went on this long rant, but I wanted to answer the question, did I abandon my rights by living here overseas in Korea? And the answer is no. I'm just enacting other rights, and I don't need to use that right while I'm in another country. I still believe in it, and I still support it, and I always will. But at the time, I'm under the laws of another country, and I have to abide by those. So, yeah, that's kind of some very interesting stuff of why a Second Amendment gun guy like me, how I left the United States, got rid of all my guns and ammunition, and retired overseas here in Korea. I can honestly say a lot of my identity, or part of my identity came from firearms, came from the Second Amendment. And so I had to get rid of those things, my identity took a hit. But it was also a great thing because then I was able to actually center and find out more of who I was as an individual, minus those things. Those are activities. And my identity should not be wrapped around those things. My identity should be me. And I think too often in the United States, what we and other countries, is people do that. Their identity is wrapped up by what they do in their work, or who they associate with, or the things that they drive, and the things that they buy, and the things that they wear, and the bling that they have. But really, that's just stuff. That is not you as a person. So in one way, I'm sad that I had to give up my firearms to come and live in Korea. But in another way, I'm also happy because I found more identity in myself without those things. And I think that's a huge maturity process that more people need to come into. Now, does it mean that if you have a bunch of firearms and ammunition like I had or more, does that mean that I think you have less identity as a person, as an individual? No, absolutely not. There's a ton of people out there that have their priorities nailed on straight when it comes to their identity, who they are, and then they still participate in the Second Amendment and hobbies and all kinds of other neat stuff. There's nothing wrong with having good things and having hobbies, but you shouldn't lose your identity at the expense of those hobbies or things. So, yeah, so a little bit of recap. Why did I retire overseas? Big one is expenses. Second one was being able to retire, 12 or 15 years early. Guns, Second Amendment. I'm still a big Second Amendment proponent. I'm still very active. Matter of fact, I'm more active now than when I was before because I'm retired. I have a lot of time. And I'm enjoying my early retirement. Is where in the United States, I would still be working. I wouldn't be able to retire in the United States until I was like 67. And even then, I would probably have to downsize. But, and that's what we were going to do. To be honest with you, we were going to sell our big house, and then we were just going to buy like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, and downsize. But the prices of 3-bedroom, small, old, 3-2 houses where we were looking at, it was just way too expensive. It's almost like, it's a bad investment. And then we still have the ever-increasing fast-paced expenses in the United States, and compared to Korea won out. We also looked at Thailand, we also looked at Philippines and things like that, and I think, what was the other one we looked at? Puerto Rico, and what was the other one? It was the one down in South America. I can't remember the name. But because it was socialist, and it was like, and the bureaucracy that came with being in that country or whatever, the horror stories and so on and so forth, it just wasn't, it didn't fill us with joy, as Marie Kondo would say. If it strikes no joy, get rid of it. So, yeah. So here we are. We're here retired in Korea, and hopefully this video will answer questions as to why, the big reasons of why we retired overseas, which I think are, for us anyway, was worth selling everything and moving overseas. For some other people, it might not. You could retire in the United States and more power to you. But we just saw the opportunity to retire early and still save money. It seemed like a win-win situation for us. And my wife's family's Korean, and they're still here. I have no ties in the United States, so it's like I'm open to go anywhere. So, yeah, it's good to go. So, anyway, please put a like on this video and subscribe. It'd be really cool. I do some other videos on, like, resin printing and painting, like, miniature dudes. Like, I don't know if you can see that guy there. I don't know, is that gonna, yeah. See that guy there, and then I got another guy here that I'm painting. I'm doing him the red, so it's kind of cool. Yeah, it's something to do. I just thought it was cool. The miniatures, military, still want to shoot and blow things up, and so I'm living vicariously through these miniatures. But yeah, I do some exercise videos every once in a while. I'll post some stuff on that, and then retired in Korea, our experiences, how we retired, and so be sure to check out those videos. But yeah, like and subscribe, and hopefully you'll hang around and you'll see something else that you like and pass that on. And maybe, just maybe, this might give other people who feel like they're stuck under the oppression of ever increasing expenses, thinking I'm never going to be able to retire, and maybe consider overseas retirement. Still be a U.S. citizen, but you just live in another country. So anyway, we'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you. Peace. There you go. That is it.